We talk about Joe Biden and his problems with women, AOC, Sanders, and a little bit more on the Mueller report. This is Matt Field, and this is Ditch Your Political Party podcast. So there are a lot of things going on politically. We talk a lot about politics, obviously, but there were things going on presidential politics this week that kind of governed what was going on with the media. Some of it's good, some of it's dumb, some of it's bad. So we'll try and get into all of that. But before we do that, I want to share something with you first. So, are you a business owner? Do you have inventory or product component or ingredients that you don't need any longer? Are you dying to liquidate the inventory so you have cash to invest more effectively in your business? Is it to the point where you could shut your doors? If you are battling with excess or surplus inventory, use ExcessSupplyList.com. I've said this many, many times. ExcessSupplyList.com is like the Craigslist for your industry. If you are trying to get rid of pallets of stuff, of ingredients, of components, of product, whatever it may be, list it and try and get it sold. You can also go there to purchase things, to get a better deal, to whatever it may be. So go to ExcessSupplyList.com and list your excess or surplus inventory and get cash in your pocket now, so you can more effectively invest in your business. You go to ExcessSupplyList.com, click on Publish, ad for free. You'll set up an account, and before you know it, you've got something listed. So go to ExcessSupplyList.com. Again, ExcessSupplyList.com. So probably one of the bigger things in the forefront is Joe Biden. Everyone's talking about Joe Biden and whether or not he's actually going to get in the race. I think he obviously at this point is going to get into the race. I don't think there's any more question there. I think a couple of weeks ago, I think it was pretty clear that he would get into the race. And right now, he's just trying to figure out what he's going to do. The problem with Joe, the best thing going for Joe Biden is if you look at the polls, he is trending very well. He's the only one that can beat, according to the polls, that would beat Trump at this point. Now, granted, there haven't been any debates. Nothing else has taken place, but Joe Biden is on the forefront of that. So, which is funny because the Democratic Party is kind of the whole thing about, their whole thing is we're trying to, the intersectionality, right? We want to promote those that are of a different race. We want to promote those of different gender, all this sort of thing. And Joe Biden is kind of your standard walk-in-the-mill, white dude. So it's ironic that that's the case. But really, the Democrats should really take that into consideration. If Joe Biden is trending so well, then why are they going so crazy on the one end? So, of course, the media decides that he's not intersectional enough for them, and they've been going after him for some pretty obvious stuff. So for the longest time, if you have been familiar with politics whatsoever, Joe Biden has been a very touchy, handsy person. He's in my opinion, he's borderline, he's inappropriate for sure, I think. He's what he does just doesn't match the tone of an individual or the situation or things like that. He's just a little too much most of the time. If you look at some of the pictures or video of him stroking the face of little girls and of adults and stuff like that, if it were my kid, I'd walk right over and snatch him away. I don't want him touching him. So, it's been for a very, very, very long time that Joe Biden is kind of a creepy dude. There's nothing all that alarming about it because it's existed for so long. He's always done it in public. He's always been very affectionate. He's been, and like I said, for the most part, way over the top. So the weird part comes, first off, he's kind of a weird dude. He's a creepy dude. That's just Joe Biden, right? Now, that's not good at all, right? You don't want to be a creepy dude, but he is. But everybody knows this. So that's the part that really isn't all that surprising. The surprising part is now the Democrats are going after Joe Biden to essentially take him down, to get rid of him to one degree or another. And they're going after this specific part. So there's a bunch of women coming out saying that, hey, he touched me. He touched me inappropriately. The whole Me Too movement, they're like, well, it's not a Me Too thing, it wasn't anything sexual or something like that, but he held my hand for a beat too long, or he hugged me for just a little too long, or he squeezed my shoulders, or he put his forehead against mine, or things like that. In fact, there are some that have gotten a picture with Joe Biden with him doing this exact thing, and then they took that picture and framed it, but then they still claim that they felt uncomfortable about it. So kind of just really weird politics, and it's so obvious what the Democrats are trying to do, what the media is trying to do, is they're trying to discredit Joe Biden to make sure that he doesn't actually enter the race, which is, again, so weird, because when you look at the polls, he is the only one that holds the best chance at beating Trump. So it's a really weird thing. So they continue to raise these allegations. Elizabeth Warren, she says that she believes the allegations. Of course you believe the allegation. Everyone believes the allegation. But she also doesn't have any idea of what could be done or what needs to happen. And let's be frank, Elizabeth Warren is pretty much out of the picture anyway. She's hemorrhaging money and staff. And I would not be surprised early on if she's probably going to wait. She's going to hang in there till the first debate and just see what happens, right? So, anyway, for some reason, everyone's going after Biden, and they really should stop, because it's not going to do anybody any good, and it's pretty silly. Again, it's one of those tactics that the media and politicians are using. They're trying to over-exaggerate something that has existed for a long time, but now all of a sudden they noticed. They do this against their opposition as well. Republicans, and probably just Republicans, not independents, but probably just Republicans. But they would probably have gone after it more. They would begin to insinuate different things as well, like they did with Judge Kavanaugh. They made him a 30-year allegation, and everybody said that there wasn't anything that had possibly happened, but then they just kept going. They just kept reaching. And so the politics in Washington are so ridiculous. They've been this way for a very, very long time, but they are just so ridiculous. Anything and everything is on the table, and if one girl says one thing, then she must be believed no matter what, right? If a man says something, doesn't matter. So, we talk about equality, we talk about all these different things, but they can't actually put it on the other foot. So, if something terrible happens to a man, it won't get any coverage. It wouldn't even get a blurb, right? There wouldn't be anything. Maybe a local newspaper would cover it, but that's it. So, politics, as usual, are falling apart. And as usual, as we say, ditch your political party, because this is the madness that takes place. Something that everybody knew was taking place, like Joe Biden, who has always been kind of a creepy, touchy dude, is all of a sudden looked upon as this terrible person for doing these things. And people are coming out of the woodwork making all these different claims. And some of them, they're actually on film, so you could evaluate this film, And so it's just silly that this is happening once again. So get rid of your political party. Look at what actually matters, because this does not matter. This is complete garbage, and the only reason that this is getting attention is because those that are running the media aren't satisfied with Joe Biden as kind of the main guy, as the final pick. So, and then of course Biden just plays right into it and comes out and apologizes for all these different things. If you look at his apology initially, the first portion of the apology is about where it needs to be. I'm a touchy guy. I'm sorry. I didn't really mean to do anything wrong like that. I'll watch myself a little bit better. But then he kind of goes a little bit farther, and he's like, yeah, that's what I recognize now, that young people don't want to be involved with this sort of thing. And, times have changed. And so, he's basically just making himself out of date more and more. But, you never know until you hit the polls. Well, until the day comes where you actually vote, that's when you're going to actually see the result. Right now, it's just nothing. And it will remain nothing. As soon as he actually announces his candidacy, this will kind of disappear, I think, for the most part. There will still be different when they do the debates. I'm sure there'll be plenty of funny questions like this that the mainstream media are going to approach, but at the end of the day, I think it'll basically clear up. So, but on to even more ridiculousness, we're going to go on to AOC. Now, again, our show is all about logic. We want you to think critically. We don't claim any particular affiliation. I am unaffiliated. I am actually literally unaffiliated with my political party. I am just a logical thinker. Okay, 2 + 2 is 4. It always is, always will be, and that's just the way it is. Okay, I believe in scientific data. I believe in a lot of different things that make sense to me. Okay, so when AOC comes in and she's sitting in an interview with Chris Hayes, and they talk about cow flatulence and how it is a problem, and then Chris Hayes actually backs her up on it, then it gets a little ridiculous. We're talking about cow flatulence. This is a topic, and this is an item on AOC's agenda. She wants to figure out how to plug up those holes, right? She wants to prevent any more farting. And heck, and see, that's the funny part. We humans are all over the earth, right? So do we need to start thinking about this? Is this something critical that we need to do? Do we need to start taking specific supplements that prevent us from actually farting? And if and again, at the end of the day, well, we won't get into all the biology associated with flatulence and why it is caused, because it is pretty disgusting. And it would happen anyway, regardless of whether or not it comes out a little bit earlier than if it didn't, right? So, again, another silly point from her, and she's, I don't know. In this interview as well, she blames the Green New Deal draft, quote unquote, on her staff. That they were just a little too ambitious and they sent it out. The funny thing is it was a draft, right? And it's been weeks and weeks and weeks, but they haven't actually released the new option, right? They haven't released what it was supposed to be. So we're still sitting on cow flatulence. We're still sitting on eliminating all cars. We're still sitting on eliminating planes and just using trains. And those are probably the most ridiculous ones. Oh, and of course, also, you can get a job if you want a job. If you don't want a job, we'll still take care of you. Basically, she has described communists that have actually lost their minds. Right, communism is a good idea to begin with, but communists who have lost their minds because now they're eliminating all the energy that they possibly could use, and then they're spending all the money they don't have to replace them with trains. So, and all she ever says is we need to have a serious conversation. Conversations never got anybody anywhere, and that's what bothers me so much about politics. There is so much debating, and I hate it. I hate it when they say serious conversation. I hate it when they say, now we need the country needs to have a debate about this. What are you talking about? Are we setting up a debate or something so that everyone can sit down and discuss this? No. We need to put something on the books. We need to work something out. We have to put down some action items, because all everybody does is they put it out in the ether, and they just use it as some sort of fuel on social media or the internet or whatever it is to get them more clicks, to get them more notice, to get them all this garbage. Because at the end of the day, they aren't interested in actually acting. The majority of the people in Washington aren't doing jack. That's the way it is. Nothing is actually happening. And when something does happen, it's all on the basis of, some weird political issue that's been trending, that the media has really been pushing, and so now all the Republicans or the Democrats are all just up in arms about it, and so now something has to be done. Finally, something has to be done. And if you don't do it, then you don't care about people. You don't care. It doesn't. And one quick side note, something that bothered me a lot. Okay, so Mr. Mayor de Blasio, he's still flirting with the idea of potentially running for president, but he's not going to run for president. I don't know what he's doing. In any case, he's flirting with this idea, and he's speaking someplace, I can't remember exactly, but he says, don't let people tell you whether or not we can afford it. You don't listen to people if they say, well, what will it cost? What will it cost? And then he just goes to these. It doesn't matter. I was sitting one time in a city hall, and after the mayor and the city council had proposed this particular item, and they had to essentially cut off the funding at some point because they couldn't continue to, they can't just continue to fund it. They only have a limited amount of funds. One of the gentlemen that got up, he said, you can't put a price on life. You can't put a price on this. You can't put a price on them recovering. You can't put a price. He just went on and on about you can't put a price on something. And the fact of the matter is you have to put a price on something, okay? Because we do not have unlimited resources. And contrary to what Bill de Blasio has to say, that it's not the money. Money isn't the issue. He is dead wrong. If he had any inkling, if he actually cared, then he would know. I mean, he's an old guy. I guess so. Since he's an old guy, he probably isn't all that interested in what's going to happen into the far future, right? So maybe he's going to pass away before they actually have to deal with all this. So, but we still have $220 trillion. $220 trillion. We make 3.5-ish trillion a year. There's no way we're paying that back. And on top of that, we've got $22 trillion in debt. And Mr. Genius Trump decided to raise our debt ceiling to $4.5 trillion. So not only do we have all this debt, based on the numbers, if we're bringing in $3.5 trillion, he raised it to $4.5 trillion. Now we are literally having to pay, we're going to dig ourselves a hole, an extra $1 trillion per year. Like clockwork. And you'll better believe it that when the Dems or the Republicans decide to go to the president again, they ask for a higher debt ceiling, they're going to give it to him. That's just the way it is. Until something actually happens in Washington. Now that's not going to happen by the politicians, not one bit. Okay? And that leads me into my next point. And it's the Convention of States. Right now, everybody in Washington, outside a handful of people, have lost their minds. They don't care about budget. They don't care about the people. They only care about power, 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 power. That's the only thing they care about. Well, power and money on their part. They don't care if they make the entire country bankrupt. Okay? Because here's the problem. If a country were to go bankrupt, what do you think is going to happen? Creditors are going to come after them. And the United States, nobody likes the big tough guy, right? The United States is the big tough guy. If that guy defaults on their loans, what do you think is going to happen? It would essentially be the start of World War III. But wait, we don't have any money. We don't have any money to fund World War III. So what's going to happen? We're literally just going to be sitting ducks. Right? We can't pay people. We can't actually pay people to go out and fight. So, or then they get, that maybe at that point it's the breaking point and they actually decide to stop spending so much. So Convention of States is one of the places where we can begin to take care of this big issue. To actually say, hey, it's done. It's over with. All of you in office, we are going to set a term limit on you, just like they did the president. It's not unusual. It's not bad. All it's saying is now you can't run for office 900 times. And we need to get new blood in here. Have fresh ideas. And we need to get some things done in Washington. That's the first step. You got to get all the old fogies out of there. Okay? It's not age, it's the amount of time they have spent there. And it's just like, I mean, there are a lot of things I don't agree with Trump, but the one thing I do agree with is it's a swamp. It's a swamp up there. And the sooner we can drain that, the better. So go to conventionstates.com and sign the petition. There are 4 million plus strong. Hopefully we can get more and more and more. Of course, Utah has signed on, so that's great. I'm happy to hear that. And many more states should continue to join. We still have a long ways to go, but the sooner we get it done, the better. So AOC is a little upset about, she wants to have a serious conversation about cow flatulence, among other things. She also is talking, and again, this leads to the point of logic. Okay, so if you're going to go in and you're going to elect someone, you want to review their record. You want to see what they have done in the past. You want to see how effective they've done. And now, again, this isn't what they've said they would do. This isn't what they've said they have done in the past. You want to see what they have done in action. What have they actually proposed and completed? Don't be interested in somebody that has just been essentially advocating for this or that, but actually hasn't gotten anything done. I'm a huge proponent for people that have started their own business. I'm a business owner, and it is one of the hardest things you'll ever do in your entire life, to start a business. Those first couple of years, especially if you don't have funding, it is so difficult. Making sure you make enough money to feed your family, making sure you can actually make it through, take care of all your expenses. It is a daunting task, and those that have successfully navigated that are already miles ahead of anybody that proclaims to be, a great operator in the public sphere. I don't care about that stuff. That stuff does not matter to me one bit. Working in the government is like living at your folks' house. You're always going to be taken care of. You can never be kicked out. I guess if you've got good parents, they'll kick you out. But if you don't, you can just stay there. You can be lazy. You can be terrible at your job, but you'll just continue to stay there. They won't get rid of you. They won't fire you. So this is what flabbergasts me about AOC. She doesn't know anything, it seems. She talks about FDR and how that's when the Democrats were at their strongest point with the New Deal programs and all this sort of thing. And she said that they had to pass the 22nd Amendment so FDR wasn't elected again. Did she forget that FDR died in office? Did she know that? And that the amendment wasn't actually ratified until 1951. So, I mean, it's pretty silly. It's pretty silly that this whole thing is that she's able to gain so much momentum, and everything that comes out of her mouth is cow flatulence and serious conversations and blaming her staff of doing something wrong and saying that the 22nd Amendment was passed so that FDR wasn't elected again when he passed away in office, and all these silly things. I mean, and then Trump goes along and makes fun of the Green New Deal, which is fine. Everyone should make fun of the Green New Deal because it's garbage. Okay? The thing that I love the most is when our Senator Mike Lee went in there and said the hardest thing about getting through the speech for me is not laughing. Because it is. The entire idea is laughable. They don't understand. She doesn't understand what she's talking about. And anybody supporting the Green New Deal doesn't understand. Again, last week when they decided to do a vote on it, all the Republicans voted against it, along with 4 Democrats, and all the rest of them voted present. Nobody wants the Green New Deal. Why is AOC relevant whatsoever? I don't know. So, continue to think on that. If you are in New York and you elected AOC, you really need to think about what you're doing. You cannot listen to that shoulder devil telling you from the Democratic side, vote for AOC because of this, that, and the other, because she's so awesome and hot and all this blah, blah, blah. And it's just complete garbage. So, that's my rant on AOC once again. I'm going to send my wife a text real quick. 1 second. All right. So now we're going to move on to a couple other folks here. But before I jump into some more of those different things, I want to talk about the border real fast. If you weren't aware, there's something that is a little bit troubling, is that there are tons more people coming across the border. So usually on a regular day, they're getting about 200 to 300 people coming through. Okay? Right now there are 800 people coming in. They don't have the facility to take care of it. They don't have... Again, this strengthens the whole argument of the wall, right? The whole concept of the wall. People are trying to get into your house. What do you got to do? You put up a wall. You put up some element of security so that you can prevent them from getting in, right? And a lot of people have said this is fantasy, this is whatever, but if it's a wall, if it's whatever, something has to take place, because the more and more people that come across the border and less legitimate people that are in the United States, the more likely, or I guess more so, the less likely we're able to maintain any kind of order. So again, it's the whole logic factor again. If you're letting people come in and you're letting them live on food stamps, you're letting them live on the government, and they've never paid any taxes whatsoever, at some point there's going to be things are going to run dry. I mean, again, we are already run dry. We don't have any money. We have been living on credit our entire lives. Since I've been alive, in fact, I bet you we've been living on credit. Okay, we don't make enough money to do everything we want to do. We have to break down what's important, focus on the necessities, and then we can start talking about all these other things. But nobody wants to do that, because then you don't care about those people. Oh, you don't care. No, I care so much about them that I want to make sure that my country doesn't go bankrupt. So, if you're actually going to legitimately approach these different things, the problem is today is if you go in and make a logical argument, you are torn apart by insanity. Somehow 2 + 2 = 4 is offensive. I mean, how is that possible? How is this a problem? We have to make sure that we have order. If we don't have order, we will be annihilated. I mean, it's just silly that nobody's able to recognize this. And I'm not just talking about, people across the nation. I'm talking about our senators, some of our senators and some of our representatives and some of our congressmen and women. They won't recognize it, not because they don't know that that's the case, but because it's not politically expedient. So if you are living on political expedience, stop listening to your shoulder devil and start thinking critically. All right. So we'll hit up a few more topics here. So just a quick blurb on Sanders. He has got a ton. He's got a ton of momentum. He's $18 million the first quarter. He's raised more money than anybody else. However, Beto O'Rourke is actually doing quite well. He raised about $9 million or so in a very short period of time. So he could actually give Bernie Sanders a run for his money as far as the money goes. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything, because, think of the amount of money that Hillary Clinton spent versus what Donald Trump spent, and Donald Trump still won. I don't know how much she actually spent, but people were more interested in getting Trump on the screen than Hillary Clinton, so everyone was thinking Trump. Inadvertently, the mainstream media elected Trump because people just saw him over and over and over again, and he made them laugh a couple times, and so they thought, hey, yeah, I'll vote for him. So, that's unfortunately the way our politics work. So again, think critically. He proposed this week that he would lower the cost of prescription drugs by 50%. And then somebody said, how are you going to do that? He said, if you look at all of the other countries, the average is lower than ours. Okay, so how are you going to... Then the next follow-up question is, you didn't answer my question, how are you going to lower it 50%? He doesn't have an answer for that. He's looking at data that suggests that the average cost of prescription drugs in other countries is half the cost of ours. But that does not... All that says is that we have a higher cost. That says nothing about on how he's going to cut it in half. So again, another illogical presentation of facts. This doesn't make any sense. So, but he's running so hot that he potentially could be the Democratic nominee, and which would be about as horrific as his description of Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood, who does about 300,000 abortions per year, says that people are horrific that oppose it. The people who oppose aborting babies, basically the genocide for the convenience of women is not the horrific part. The horrific part is you opposing it. Okay? Can I just say, the only time that an abortion actually affects a woman's health when it comes to her mortality is very rare. The only time an abortion should be performed is under very extenuating circumstances. Not because of some mental health thing here or this or that, but because there's an actual possibility of the death of the woman. So, I mean, it's so silly that people come after these different things. But honestly, this is the genocide of our age. This is the genocide in the United States, is that these babies are being killed and it's being accepted. And it's being spinned in the sense that, hey, this is women's health. You have no place. You have no place here. You have no place here. And that is the most horrific thing in the world. If you are a woman and you're listening to this, just because it isn't convenient for you, or just because you didn't plan this, or just because you decide halfway through that you no longer want to be a mother, does not give you the right to execute your baby. There is no real argument anymore because the leftists have destroyed it. They have said that the baby is still not a baby until it exits the womb, because now people are advocating for late-term abortions. And before, the argument was, well, when is it actually a baby? Well, now you don't really have that argument, because there's nothing that happens from the time it is in the belly to once it comes out, in the womb, to once it comes out of the uterus. There's no difference whatsoever, except for an umbilical cord, and the amount of time that you have to spend with the child. So this is again complete ludicrous. I am horrified by the idea of abortions, particularly for personal reasons, which I won't go into. But I would encourage anybody who is advocating for abortion to consider it logically, particularly late-term abortion. There's no difference. There's no difference between that baby when it is in the womb and when it comes out a couple seconds later. Once she is fully dilated and ready to go, no difference whatsoever. If that umbilical cord is still attached, it does not make any difference on that baby and the livelihood of that baby. Women's health has nothing to do with this. Stop using that as the lamest excuse in the world. And I know I'm a white male. How could I have anything to say about that? My qualifications have nothing. Look, when people talk about the ability to make a judgment on something based on the way you look and your gender, they have no argument whatsoever. They are copping out. You can still determine what is good, and you can still determine what is bad. Abortion is bad. There's nothing about it that is good. And only in rare circumstances should it be employed. It's the same thing with pretty much everything under the sun. You know, heroin is bad. Heroin is bad. Only in rare circumstances can it be used skillfully and in a good way. It's the same thing with so many other things. But people like to broaden that to justify themselves. Don't allow yourself to justify, don't allow yourself to do those different things, because at the end of the day, you can justify yourself to death. Okay? You can believe what you are doing is good the entire time until you kill yourself. I mean, that happens with addicts every day. And if you are a political addict and you do not think logically, all you care about is the politics of an issue, then you will essentially turn yourself into a terrible person, because the policy is terrible. Because if you were to apply the same principles that the federal government applies, your life would be a sham. It would be terrible. It would be horrible. Not to mention, you wouldn't have any money to your name. All your creditors would be after you, and you'd probably be in jail for a multiplicity of reasons. So if your government's not going to do it correctly, then well, how do I put this? If what you're doing is as good as the government, that's a pretty low bar. Anyway, I digress. So Pete Buttigieg, I guess is how you say it. He has also supported some extreme abortion things, which is not a good idea. It's not a good plan. Not a fan. He was actually one of the few that was a little bit more on his rocker as far as Democrats go. And the one guy that I had some interest in, Howard Schultz, has now thus disappeared. So, anyway. But, things are trending in the conservative, as far as Wisconsin goes. The Supreme Court justices in that state were actually elected recently, and they are conservative, which isn't good for moving forward for the Democrats. Trump can definitely capitalize on that. So, do you suffer from any autoimmune diseases? Do you suffer from flares? Do you suffer from joint pain? Have you tried removing inflammation from your diet and body? If you are willing to look at things holistically, look at autoimmune health and nutrition. Autoimmune health and nutrition started when a sister educated a brother and a brother helped a sister. Their line of 100% compliant paleo, keto, SED, and AIP proteins are number one on the market. They're the cleanest option available and taste great. So go to primalhn.com or autoimmunehn.com and use promo code DYPP at checkout and get 20% off your entire order. Again, they have recently changed their name from primalhn.com to autoimmunehn.com to more fully focus on their main purpose, which is to help heal. So if you are tired of the conventional way of healing, let autoimmune health and nutrition help you along your holistic path. Go to primalhn.com or autoimmunehn.com. Use DYPP at checkout. Again, primalhn.com, autoimmunehn.com. DYPP at checkout for 20% off your entire order. The last couple items I wanted to touch on today. Again, you can see how quickly you can get your news just by listening to us. Okay? We monitor the news and we keep track of it throughout the week, and we condense it for you. Don't watch, if you go on to the news, right, and you listen, you're watching CNN, you're watching Fox News, you're watching whatever else, and you listen to all these different podcasts, you are going to hear the exact same thing over and over and over again. And you're probably going to hear things that resonate well with you. If you're literally just going there to drink your own Kool-Aid, then you're doing the wrong thing. You need to listen to the facts, you need to listen to the logic, and what is actually supportable, what actually is sustainable. I mean, we talk about on the show all the different aspects of what logical politics is. And the principles of this logical morality is what we call it, is whether or not it is sustainable. When you apply it to the extreme, what is the result? And does it just benefit one party or individual at the expense of another? These different things help you determine what is actually moral, what is actually logical, and when you can do that, your ability to begin to break down these different issues is substantially, that ability is increased. And so, we were just talking about abortion. Is that sustainable? Of course it's not sustainable. If you continue to kill babies at the rate that they're doing it, and you apply that in the extreme, then we'd be without, right? We'd eventually stop our ability to reproduce. And does it benefit one? Again, this is one of those that checks every single box, so it's obviously not logical or moral. So does it benefit one party or individual and at the expense of another? In this case, 100% yes. That baby has no say in it. And not to mention, I think in some states, a woman can decide to have an abortion without the consent of the father. She can do whatever she wants. So, another individual that is not benefiting, that is at the expense of that individual because one woman decides one thing. And it's encouraged by the media, it's encouraged. How are people that do this, how are they celebrated? I don't understand this. If you have a different take on abortion, please email me or comment below. Anyway, so the Mueller report is really being blown out of proportion. The Democrats really want to bring Trump down, and so they are reaching far. Barr came out and said that there really wasn't anything that was prosecutable as far as obstruction of justice. Again, collusion, and he said there was no collusion. But the collusion wasn't a crime to begin with, but the obstruction of justice was really the biggest question. That's what was prosecutable. And he said there wasn't anything there. So they're calling it a big Barr cover-up, and and they're making all these claims without any claims of this cover-up without any evidence, and which is silly because the full report is going to be released in like a week or something like that. So just wait until it comes out. Stop making all these silly little, it's like they're ramping up to something. And if they're ramping up to nothing, then I don't know what they're going to do. But as far as it sounds, that we just wasted millions of dollars on this report that essentially told us what Trump told us to begin with, right? That didn't collude with Russia. So, if some of these women can be believed, why can't he? Of course, that's not as totally applicable because, let's be real. Of all politicians, Trump is probably one of the biggest liars there is. There could be more. I don't know. Last item I'm going to hit up real quick is about Mark Zuckerberg. So we talked a little bit about crony capitalism, right? Capitalism is good, but crony capitalism is not so good. Capitalism is good because people think that it's kind of the survival of the fittest type concept, and it is. It really is. Those that are willing to go out there and work hard, and they're able to create a business, and they're able to provide jobs and do all these different things, is more productive than if you were to have a system where, like communism, where the government controls all those funds and just distributes them, and you just sort of work wherever you can work, right? So when you have some sort of motivation that you can make more money by doing this or that, whatever, that is a good thing. Now, the nice thing is that we are also human beings, and there are a lot of charities that are started. Look at one of the wealthiest men on earth is Bill Gates, and he started his own foundation. The same thing with the same sort of thing happened with Warren Buffett. He contributed to that. And so, you've got this massive foundation that's providing all these good things. You also have religion. You have many, many churches that provide those things that others can't provide for themselves. So capitalism doesn't necessarily take care of that portion of it, but the goodness inside people do. And that's not the government's responsibility. The government's responsibility is to protect us. Period. There are a few other things that they might be able to facilitate, but that's about it. People say, well, what about roads? What about all these different things? That's something they can facilitate. They don't have to create their own workforce for it, though. You know how many companies could probably more proficiently go out and cover and pave roads faster than we could, and they do it at times where we weren't even around. There was the least amount of traffic, and they didn't leave up all their silly little signs and make us slow down even when all the work's done. That's a lot better than what we currently have. So there's things that would have to be facilitated by government, but at the end of the day, it wouldn't have to be run by government. Those companies would have to answer to the government, but that would be more so along the lines of the people. So capitalism is good, right? But crony capitalism is bad. And this is what Mark Zuckerberg is kind of lining himself up with, is that a year, 18 months ago maybe, he went on and said that Facebook was responsible for the content there on the website, right? And he felt responsible for monitoring that. As soon as he said that, obviously there was a bunch of red flags, I'm sure, that came up from their attorneys that, hey, don't do that. What he should have said is, we're a platform, and that's what we do. We are like your cell phone company. Our cell phone company, I can make a call and I can talk about anything to anyone around the world. And that cell phone company doesn't bother themselves with me. They do not care. And it is a little bit different because Facebook does allow you to post something. That post can remain there. People can like that post. They can repost that post, yada, yada, yada. And it can actually get a lot more exposure than your regular phone call. But the only thing they would regulate are things that are actually legal, but legally actionable. Like, I'm going to go kill this guy. If you put something like that on your Facebook, then that is something you want to rip off immediately. So that's what the algorithm should state. But he has decided to kick this back to the government and say, I'm tired of regulating my site, so I think I'd like more regulation on the government side. And he's doing this because there are a lot more, the government in the UK, they're starting to come out and say that they personally could be liable for the things that are on their site, which is no good for Facebook, obviously, or for Mark Zuckerberg. So he's thinking, hey, well, if I can get in bed with the government, I can rub shoulders with them. It's going to augment my success because they're going to essentially facilitate Facebook more than other sites, and we will grow while the other ones diminish, and I won't have to deal with this pesky little issue of regulation, which he put upon himself and he shouldn't have done to begin with. But regulating his site shouldn't have been his original pitch when he was brought before the committee. So, anyways, that's that. The full overview: Joe Biden, he's a creepy dude. Everyone knew that. Don't know why anyone didn't notice before. The Mueller report, everyone still believes is a bombshell, even though Barr came out and now it's a big cover-up. But he's only going to cover it up for a couple weeks. And Mark Zuckerberg is starting to engage in crony capitalism. So, there you go. That was your week. I hope you enjoyed the highlights. And subscribe, like us, leave us a review, comment below. We like to respond. And hopefully we'll hear from you. Well, we'll hear from you, and we'll see you next week. Thanks a lot, guys.